Welcome back to the Jungle Fever podcast. I'm Ethan Sargent. Ig Crowley's alongside me. Happy Valentine's Day to all my Bengals fans out there. Only one
Wearing
wish.
red. I'm wearing
There you
red.
go. I'm wearing heartbreak. So that's um but yeah, we're in the thick of the offseason. And I mean I really think, and I said this last week, I really think that this truly is the deadest period of the NFL calendar because they try everything. It's a year-round thing, the NFL now. When you get into the combine's in what, 2 weeks? The period between the Super Bowl and the combine is probably the quietest period of the NFL season, right? You get your parade, you get your Seattle does their dance, and now everybody's kind of quiet, right? There were a couple little things like Tyreek Hill got released today, couple other little here and there kind of things. Bradley Chubb, the Dolphins are just cleaning house. I would expect Tua is not too far behind him.
Yeah.
Um, but it gives us a chance. Like I said this last week, I enjoy this time of year because it gives us a chance to kind of go out there and have some funner things. So we talked a little bit last week about like ideal free agent signings, right? And we talked a little bit about what the ideal world, we were the GMs, what we would do. And we talked about that really over the last couple of weeks ever since the Bengals been eliminated. So I think this week I want to do some true bold predictions. And I'm gonna get this is gonna be a fun exercise. I'm stealing this from Josh Pate. I'm stealing this from the Bald Man. Um, we're gonna rate this. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of go back and forth, and the other person will rate this on the boldness scale. So the boldness scale, 0 is yeah, it like Joe Burrow is well, actually you can't really rate that as 0. But the like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both catch a pass next season. That's a 0 on the boldness scale, right? A 10 would probably be something like Joe Burrow passes for 7,000 yards, right? Or maybe like something, it could be a little bit more realistic. Joe Burrow
Okay.
passes for 5,500 yards, right? I think that is not remotely possible, but it is possible, right? It could happen. He does Peyton Manning 2013 and just goes nuclear, right? So I'll let you kind of go first, and we could go back and forth here with a few of these. I've got a couple written down. I'll give you time to rack the brain a little bit. If you want me to go first, I can go first. Um,
Yeah, go. You go first.
Sure. So, and then the other person could just rank, right? 0, it's happening. 10, all right, better luck. Well, what Josh does on his show is he like does it, and if it's a 9.5 or better on his scale, he sends them the little chalice of from his weird little cult, which I like. Look, I love Josh Pate, but it gets to a point sometimes. Um, so let's see. Let me go look at my list here. Ooh, this is a good one. I wrote this one down. So this one is probably going to be a little bit higher on that scale. And it depends on a lot of different factors. I think the Bengals have three 800 plus yard receivers next year. Um, so obviously there are two layups here, right? You expect Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to both be above 800 yards. It's that third one, right? And this was actually a topic of conversation I wanted to hit on today. I've talked about how I really want the Bengals to get aggressive in that wide receiver 3 market, whether it's free agency or the draft. My preference would be the draft, but I think that there's just such a huge opportunity for that third pass catcher this year. We've talked about this at length, right? This is not a new thing, right? When you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it's going to open up monster opportunities. That 800 could well be Mike Gesicki, right? He was close back in 2024. He had what, 655 yards that season. Obviously, last year dealt with a lot of injuries, didn't have as many yards, but Mike Gesicki could very well be that 800-yard guy. I think it's in that realm of possibility. I think Joe Burrow is going to want to pass the ball as often as he has throughout his NFL career. This is a top passing offense. I think it's a realistic thing. I think it's something that can happen. If I were rating this, I'd probably give it somewhere in the eights. I don't know how Ayden feels about that, but I'll let you kind of think about how that one might go.
Yeah, I just don't see who that third guy is, in my opinion. I would probably give it like a 7.5, 8, just assuming that, well, I guess this might factor into it. Assuming Burrow plays all of 26, you feel good about them throwing a lot and racking up the passing yards. I just think there's a lot of mouths to feed. And I think about how the Bengals, especially recently, like to vary up their packages with 12 personnel, getting guys like Drew Sample and Tanner Hudson on the field more often. It just feels like that concentration of target share for that third option isn't very likely. If there is a guy, it probably is Gesicki, or it's a guy out there that we don't know about or is not on the team right now.
Mhm.
Because I just don't think Yoshivas has the ceiling for something like that. I don't think
Mhm.
he is that guy that you lean on. I don't necessarily hate it. I just don't know how likely it is. Plus, Gasecki got hurt last year, and like you said, and missed some time, and he is kind of aging. But I don't think it's necessarily outlandish to say something like that would happen now.
Mhm.
So I guess I go next.
Sure, go
Uh,
ahead.
do you want to draft one, or do you want a
I
play?
was, this is, you can do whatever here. Do some
Okay,
draft ones, do some season predictions. We're in February. We got a long way to go, right? There you can the whole off season is at your disposal. Free agency
sure.
stuff, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Um, with a good running mate alongside him, Miles Murphy continues his upward trajectory from the end of 2025 and ends the 2026 season with 8+ sacks.
Ooh, I'm a fan of that. I like that prediction. Um, I'm gonna give that like a 6.5 because I think that's pretty likely. I think that that is you saw like the this is it was such a weird kind of flashy thing because everybody was so focused on how bad the defense was, especially in the first half of the season. And then the bye hit, and this was a topic I wanted to hit on later, but we could touch on it a little bit now. Al Golden pretty much stripped the defense of all its complexity after the bye, right?
Lou Anarumo
He
did something similar when he was here. So,
Right. They just said, you know what? We're just going to play 4-2-5. We're not going to do anything crazy. There's not going to be any major brain waves. And lo and behold, they were a little not they weren't exactly the 2000 Ravens, but they were a little bit better, right? They improved ever so slightly. It was still very much cracks, but they improved a little bit. So, I think that going back to Murphy specifically, right? I don't necessarily think that those were just flash in the pan things. I think he showed some real tangible growth and improvement over the back half of the season. Now, I think the biggest question about that is that first part of your sentence where you said a tangible running mate. I think that's what the Bengals are going to be very much in the market for or having a keen eye on this year. Now you have a pick in Shamar Stewart, who you invested a first round draft pick in. They're not out on him yet at all. Neither am I. He's going to get plenty of opportunities next season. Obviously, a lot of injuries in 2025. That's okay, right? He's got a chance, just as Miles did, to develop, right? Miles Murphy had a longer leash, and Miles Murphy was drafted later in the first round than Shamar Stewart was. So I think um I think that the Bengals are going to look, and obviously we'll see what happens to Trey Hendrickson. There's been a lot more rumors. We talked about it a little last week with tagging and trading. Nothing concrete as yet. But I do think I just again I'm with Ayden that I don't see Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati next year. That could have been a fun bold prediction. I think that like, if that but Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati would have been like a 9 or a 10 for me.
yeah.
Um, but
I don't see Miles getting to that like 8, 9, not elite numbers, but like respectable numbers for an edge. I think as an edge one, I just don't see that as an alpha. So that's why I threw that little caveat in there. But you look at the guys who got 8 or 8.5 sacks last year. It's guys like Josh Hines Allen, it's Bradley Chubb, it's Javanian Clowney, it's Leatu Latu. Like respectful pass rushers, but they don't exactly blow you out of the water. I think Miles Murphy could get in that conversation.
Yeah. And the thing with the Bengals, and it's been an issue with Trey Hendrickson on the field, is that you're not getting consistent pressure, right?
Mhm.
Even with one of the best in the business on one side, they weren't getting consistent pressure. So I think that's a big challenge for Al Golden this offseason. We've talked about this at length already, so we don't need to go too in depth into it. But finding a way to get pressure before, right? Not blitzing, finding a way to bring four guys and get home, right? And I think it starts on the interior, which we know all too well about. So, um, I'm going to go with a free agency take here because I saw an article about this. I think the Bengals sign four or more defensive external free agents.
Okay. I
So
You started that sentence, and I thought you were gonna like put a timetable on it, like they did when they signed Kappa and Volson back to back on day one.
Right. Oh, that was crazy.
I thought you were gonna say they signed four external defensive free agents on the first day, and I was like, whoa. But I think in total of free agency, I'd give it like a five. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that that's very bold. I think that Duke Tobin was
Honestly, if you want
clear
to
in
make
his
it
mission.
bolder, I might increase that number to like six. Like I think that they really, and I'm not saying they signed six starters, but I think, this was part of the release that I read today, with Al Golden and with the front office, right? They kind of said that we have money to spend last year, and then they just didn't really spend it. I don't think that that happens this year, right? If it does, is there really even a reason to watch this team,
Yeah.
right? I think they're going to spend that money. But I think, and this was the big part of this release that was corresponded from a couple of insiders, is that the Bengals are going to be looking for quantity over quality, right? So I think that they're just looking for more bodies to play meaningful snaps, right?
Warm
Which
bodies.
I, I'm not, this is just me. I'm not endorsing this. I'm just saying that I think that they're going to sign like a lot of external free agents, right? I don't think they're going to take any of the huge swings, maybe, but I think there's going to be a lot of new bodies in that building next year, especially on the defensive side.
100%. I mean, you think they have a whole starter spot just open, vacant in that safety position. Like
Mhm.
they gotta fill that somehow.
There's competition at about five or six other positions too on
Right.
that defense. So it's not like if you're signing, right, a lot of people will leave teams in free agency because they want to start, right? I think about like Nakobe Dean, for example, in Philadelphia this year, who's going to be a free agent. He'll make a lot of money and he'll go somewhere where he can play because he was behind some other great linebackers in Philadelphia, right? Like not necessarily in the Bengals case, maybe, right? The Bengals look at Nakobe Dean and be like, hey, we feel like Nakobe Dean could be that leader, and they sign him, right? I'm just saying. I'm not necessarily endorsing or saying that that's going to happen, but it's a possibility, something like that. And there's a lot of other players like that. We talked about Nick Cross a couple weeks ago. That's another example, right? I think Nick Cross could maybe jump up a depth chart as opposed to where he was in Indianapolis, especially with Sauce Gardner coming over. So, yeah, stuff like that. I think, again, that's why I think they're going to sign a lot of those. They're going to look for a lot of those younger players that are coming off their first contracts. And I think they're going to try and make this defense younger, which they already kind of started to do last year. And I think they're going to try, and I know this is kind of an oxymoron to what I just said, they're going to try and make it more experienced, which, we'll see, right? We'll see. It's all a work in progress. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
I have a draft take. And this is one that I don't know if I necessarily believe in, but we'll see after the combine how the chips fall. I think that Ruben Bain will fall in the draft to a double digit draft
Ooh,
order outside of the top nine.
interesting. So he would be there in theory.
So I think he could be available for the Bengals at 10. Now, when I say this, obviously, I don't, if I was an NFL GM drafting, I don't agree because I see what I see on the field and his disruptive ability, his ability to not only rush the passer at a very high clip at Miami, but also what he does in run game and everything, and just kind of the leader he is on the field. However, you look at the draft, you look at the order, you look at guys like Arvell Reese, David Bailey, who's been a riser recently, and then you also look at team needs for teams like the Browns, the Raiders, and maybe even the Chiefs if you want them to love them in that category of needing like playmakers or X factors on offense. And so I can see teams kind of talking themselves out of a guy like Ruben Bain, especially when some of his measurables come out. Specifically, his arm length has been talked about at length here in this offseason. That's been the big knock on him. And so I can see teams starting to shy a little bit away from him and maybe talk themselves into a guy like David Bailey, who's just a freak off the edge, speed rush guy who can go get the quarterback, and then more polished, I guess, if you want to use that word, polished prospects like a guy like Caleb Downs. So I think that Ruben Bain has the opportunity to fall a little bit more than what some people will think.
Okay.
I'll attach something onto this as well. I think Jeremiah Love goes much higher than people think.
Ooh.
I People have him slotted right now at the Chiefs at 9. I think there's a chance he can jump into that top 5.
Ooh, I could see him going to New York at 6. I think that's a
I think
possibility.
Arizona could talk themselves into it. I think Tennessee could talk themselves into it. I think those kinds of teams have we see it every year, right?
Yeah.
Because Bijan was in that conversation of oh maybe he's a late first round guy. He goes crazy high. Jahmyr Gibbs was not on the first round radar at all. It's these running backs that I think teams recognize can be absolute franchise changers like that. I think Jeremiah Love fits that bill for some teams. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I think I'll give that an 8 just because I think that NFL GMs are actually going to fall in love with Bain at the combine because I think it comes down to a couple of different things here because number one, I just think like obviously I compared to these guys that are in the top of these things, I know nothing about football. But when you watch, like you when you just like sit in front of a computer and you turn on the tape from literally pick a game in the college football playoff. The Ohio State game, obviously, he was a monster. The Ole Miss game, he was a threat, even with his running mate Mesidor hurt for a lot of that game. Um, National championship, he made plays, right? Even though they lost, he made plays. So, like, I just I don't know how you could turn on that film and not be like, okay, this guy is a difference maker at the next level. Even with, like you said, the measurables are going to come out, they're not going to be good, right? I think he knows that. I think at this point, NFL GMs know that. I don't think it's like it's not going to be this shocking revelation that he has short arms, right? So, um, again, I think if I'm like, for example, Tennessee at 4, I don't know if I let him go past me at 4. I, I'm not. Maybe my thing is I'm not as high on David Bailey, but I think Baines is a better prospect than Bailey is. I think that I would, if it were me in that Tennessee GM's position and I had those two guys in front of me, I think I'm taking Bain. Now, what do I know, right? That very well could be a real slide because some of these teams, as we know, NFL teams love to do, they'll overthink it, right? They'll just let a guy drop, right? We've seen it happen with bad players, right? And we've seen it happen with great players. Look at Lamar Jackson getting picked at number 32, right? Like it happens. Sometimes the GMs are proven right, sometimes they're proven very wrong. It is the glory of the NFL draft, and us armchair GMs can sit back and be like, oh well, I knew that was gonna happen. So, all right, we'll do one more each. I did a free agent one, I did a season one. Um, let's see. Oh, did I have this list? Uh, I don't see. I don't like that one. I wrote that one down, but now that we've had the conversation, I don't really like that. Um, we'll do another draft one. The
sure.
Bengals take a receiver on day 2. We've talked about this already today. I guess that'll kind of connect back to my first one. Um, I know they just did it 2 years ago, and it turned out great, as we all know. But like I think, and it's maybe, and this will be a good transition into what we talk about in the second part of this video, which is that drafting for need conversation. Um, but I think the Bengals have a real need at wide receiver 3. I think that there is potential there for a rookie to jump into this offense and instantly grab like 40 catches, 500 yards, and a few touchdowns. And that'd be a great rookie year for a guy that's got so many other weapons in this offense, right? But I think Joe Burrow still kind of lacks that quote unquote safety valve, right? You've got Jamar, you've got T, they're heavy hitters, right? And Jamar's T not really, but Jamar sometimes just is that safety valve, right? He just sometimes is just open, right? Because he's always open. But I think that he kind of lacks like that maybe more dynamic playmaker within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, like a guy they can design some screens to that isn't number one, right? That isn't Jamar Chase. And, Yosavas, you've seen some flashes. I've been a big fan of his. I think there is a good player there, but I just don't think that he's that kind of guy that can elevate. And you mentioned this earlier, that can elevate to that kind of level. So, like, I've looked again, and this is what I was about to say. This receiver class, it is deeper than deep. You have got some unbelievable players that are going to go in the second and third round, right? There's great receivers at the top of this draft. We know all about Carnell Tate. We know all about Jordan Tyson. Plenty of other very good receivers. I think there could be upwards of 4 or 5 receivers taken in the first 20 some picks, right? But then if you look into
More
round
pick.
2, round 3, I know it's that deep, right? And you look in round 2 and round 3, there's plenty. We talked about this in our mock offseason video a couple weeks ago. There is. umpteen players that could very well serve this offense. And that's why I think the Bengals may just have this board and may be like, well, this is our favorite guy. We had a first round grade on this guy, right? Now, the character concerns may well be more played up this time as they kind of overlooked it the last time and it blew up in their face. But I think they'll take a guy like a Jerjon Stribling from Ole Miss or a Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama or you know, any one of those kind of mid-ish, mid-second, late second, early third round guys, I think they're going to have their eye on them. And if a guy that they really like falls to them in either round two or round three, I think that's the direction they go.
Yeah.
And it'll
I
get laughed at too. Like it will get laughed at that pick. They'll be like, why wasn't every pick defense?
Yeah,
Shocker.
which I think is so incredibly dumb and short-sighted. But anyway, I'd give that like a 6.5, a 7, because I do think it's a relevant need, and I think it's a need that they recognize. I think the Bengals could just look at some of the end game situations in some of these tight games and see why they lost. And it's because teams go double double on Jamar and T, and they don't have a third person that strikes fear into you that can win one-on-one. They just don't right now. And having it doesn't, like you mentioned, it doesn't need somebody who is revolutionary. Like people, we can talk about this later. Like the whole Tyreek Hill thing is floated out there. I'm out on something like that.
See,
It does not need to be that. It needs to be somebody reliable, somebody who can win, and somebody who can elevate that room just so that there's a threat that teams could sit there and obviously they still probably want to double Jamar and T, but it makes you think about it just that half a beat longer of do we want to leave this guy on an island against blank, whoever. You know what I mean? And Yoshi really isn't that guy that can win one on one. Gesicki's great, but he's a matchup problem, but he's not exactly a route artist who's gonna win, like route you up and win and create separation like that. So I think it's more pressing of a need than people generally realize. And they've taken some swings recently, like Charlie Jones. Just it feels like the NFL, the modern NFL, where it's kind of changing is kind of it's moved away from his kind of like archetype as a receiver, which is a little unfortunate, but he's still a great returner. Yoshi, like you mentioned, we talked about him a little bit, probably too much this episode, but he doesn't exactly blow you away. And so it's that third option that you're kind of looking for, and they hoped it was Burton, and it wasn't. So I think I'm with you on that. I think it's a need. I think they recognize it's a need. I wouldn't be surprised if they go something like defense, offensive tackle, third round, and then on the third day they go
it's that
receive.
deep where it could potentially slide into that fourth round. And
Right.
like, I think the biggest strength of this draft I mean, I haven't done a ton of super deep scouting yet, but I've watched a little bit of film and I've seen a little bit of some of these guys, is its depth. I think that there's a lot of good players in the same spots, like receiver, right? I think
Yeah.
defensive back, a lot of really good defensive back players, both safeties and corners. If the Bengals don't take Caleb Downs, right, at pick 10, there's a lot of very good safeties that they can take in rounds two and three that they may well go after, right? Even if they sign a guy in external free agency. So we saw that pay off. I think Jordan Battle so far has been a relative success. Can he improve? Absolutely. But so far, I think he's been a relative success. And, I could see them dipping into that safety market in the draft once again. So that's what I mean. Like the depth, defensive line, another position with a ton of depth. So you just don't want a quarterback really, because there's not a lot of those to go around this year. Wait till next year is what I'll tell those teams. So, all
Right. Absolutely.
right, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Give me one more.
Okay. Okay. Let's go. We're gonna go fun one. And this is maybe part of this is like part of the hot take is attached to Joe Burrow's health, as it always is. However, we're just going to throw one out there. With a fully healthy season of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is the offensive player of the year in the
Mm.
NFL and breaks Calvin Johnson's single season yardage record of
Ooh, what is that number? Is that
19,
2000? Oh, he has
1964.
there has not been a 2,000 yard receiver.
I
That's
think
pretty
Jamar
crazy.
Chase is your first ever 2,000 yard receiver.
I don't think okay. I'm glad you brought up the offensive player of the year because this gives me the chance to get something off my chest. I am one of Jackson Smith and Jigba's biggest fans. I'm an Ohio State guy. I love the Buckeyes. I've been rooting for JSN ever since he caught that crazy pass in the back of the end zone against Indiana during the COVID season. Um, like five-star talent came in, played like a five-star, was a great Buckeye. Him getting hurt in 2023 was a big reason that season went off the rails. Um, or 2022, excuse me. Um, and then, he gets drafted, Seattle, he develops, and now he was a deserved offensive player of the year this year, right? Absolutely deserved it. Jamar Chase deserved it last year. I'm just gonna put that out there. Saquon, there have been, I believe, 15. I think the number is actually bigger than that. There have been over 15 2,000 plus yard rushers in NFL history. There have only been four Triple Crown winners. So Jamar Chase, the only one of those four to not win Offensive Player of the Year. So again, and this is kind of a crazy thing to say for me on this. I really think that it's not. I don't want to say it's an anti-Bengals bias because I don't think that's the right way to put it. I do think that it is a more like a frame of mind where some of these bigger teams you don't have to play as well to earn recognition for some of these bigger teams. I'm going to use a word here that Carl Blaylock isn't going to like. Some of these bigger market teams. I truly think you just get more exposure. You just like imagine if Malik Neighbors in New York put up the kind of numbers that Jamar Chase did, right? Which he would very, very well could. If he gets the right quarterback, he gets the right system, Malik could absolutely do it. He'd be a shoo-in for Offensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. Like it's taken Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase years to get recognition because they played for this team,
Hmm.
right? You're seeing it with DJ Turner this year. DJ Turner played like I'm not hearing it from my Browns fans. DJ Turner was miles better than Denzel Ward is this year. He was just a better player, every statistical category. Who was the Pro Bowler? The guy with the name recognition.
Right.
It is what it is. So there's and quick end rant. Let me go back to the original thing. Yeah, I do think it is bold. I'm gonna give it like a 9, but
Someone had to get in the
I
nine.
love it.
Someone had to get
I
in the
love
nine.
it, right? My only concern about it is that you have T. Higgins, you have other mouths, right? Getting Jamar Chase 2,000 receiving yards means that T probably only has about 700, right? And then you throw, Joe Burrow, let's say in this scenario, Joe Burrow throws for 4,800 yards, right? Because he'll probably have to throw about that much to get this, right? You subtract the 2,000 off that, 2,800 yards to T, Gesicki, maybe another new face or two, and then, combine the rest of them, right? So it's possible. Is it doable? Absolutely. But it's unlikely, I think. It also, like you said, depends very much on health for both guys and everybody else on that team. They need the O-line to continue to play well like it did towards the back half of last year. But yeah, I love it. I hope it happens. Right? I'm a sign off on that one because that would be cool. And I think Jamar is well overdue. I mean, if you look at the numbers and compare where he's at through 5 seasons to some of the greatest, right? It's scary. Some of the number when you put him up against some of the best. And you want to know something? You want to hear something wild? Jamar Chase, 24 years old.
Yep.
Ridiculous
He's the best
that
receiver in the NFL.
he's
I'm sorry,
24 years
Justin
old.
Jefferson. He just
He's
is.
1 year older than me.
Hmm.
Like it's ridiculous. He is unbelievable. And look, and going all the way back to Jacksonville Jigga, I'm happy to put him. I think the four best receivers in the NFL. I don't think there's much debate about this. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't think you can debate much about those four. Now you could debate about the order of those four all you want, but I think those four are just in the stratosphere of their own right now.
Hmm.
And I don't really think there's anybody particularly close to touching them. You can feel free to argue or correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anybody close to those four guys. In fact, I'm even going to say I think there's a subset of three. I think Puka's a fourth there. And I think the
Yeah.
other three are in their own category, even though I
I don't
like
know. I
Puka.
don't know if I agree with that, but yeah, yeah. But I just think that Jamar has shown time and time again, he's a playmaker. He's somebody that the Bengals offense it runs through. He's going to get his volume. He's going to get his screens. He's going to get his dump offs. He has the downfield threat. He does everything. He does everything that you want from this team. And you think about that pace that JSN was on at the start of the year. It was otherworldly, but I think Jamar Chase is just as capable of that and sustaining it for 17 games. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I would love to see it happen because I think, in that scenario, the Bengals are probably winning a lot of games too. So,
Yeah. We need to write these
um,
down and come back to
we'll
them
have to
tape.
we'll mark this video. We'll come back. It's like,
Yeah.
because we'll mark this video. Let's go to this. We have like a few minutes left, so let's talk about this briefly. This drafting for need conversation, because I think it's an important one to have as we move into the scouting combine and as we get into, about a month from now, we'll have free agency, right? I think it's actually about a month from today will be that opening Monday where it's just you have to have Rapp and Schefter and all their notifications on because you got to know all the deals ASAP. Well, maybe we'll do something special for that this year. Who knows? But because I remember last year I was sat in front of my computer on a radio show all day and I was just click clacking. Twitter went down this day. It was a disaster. But I think when you look at drafting for need, right? The Bengals do this all the time, is they shoehorn themselves into making a selection. They know that they have, and we've talked about this specific thing at length, where it's they shoehorn themselves into making a pick because, oh, we need to have a guy there. Billy Price is the obvious example, right? There was a glaring need at center in 2018. They had their guy in Frank Ragnow. They wanted Frank Ragnow. They made it very clear. And then one pick before them, who did the Detroit Lions take? Frank Ragnow. So now the Bengals are like, well, crap, there's our guy off the board, right? So what do? They draft a guy that had like a mid-second round grade on him because he was a center, right? And we all know how that turned out. Billy
Yeah.
Price, to be fair, got the Bengals BJ Hill. That's about his greatest contribution to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So
You got on your soapbox about JSN. I could get on my soapbox about this forever.
please, I'll give you the
Because
floor here. We got like 6 minutes left. Go ahead.
the draft that is not the purpose of the draft. The purpose of the draft is not to fill in holes on the roster. That's not what it is. That's what free agency is about. You do your homework before you get to the test. If you want to make that analogy, that way you're prepared for the test and you're prepared for however the board falls, whatever question comes your way, if you want to keep the metaphor going, right? And so that way you're flexible, you're dynamic. And yes, sometimes there's a need and then there's a player on the board and they align. And that's best case scenario for people who are drafting. But you should not be in the position where you feel like you have to reach for somebody just because it's a position of need. You mentioned Billy Price. I could go on and on and on about the amount of times the Bengals have done this. Most recently in this past draft with Demetrius Knight in the second round, early second round. I don't think he was a guy that necessarily needed to go that high. But for the Bengals, they needed linebacker help. And they didn't address it in free agency. And they had an aging Logan Wilson on the roster. And they just put their blinders on and ignored it and said, Demetrius Knight, early second round. Yeah, okay, sure, we're going to do it. And then you think about some of the guys that go after, and they're so extremely talented. In my opinion, the draft should be about getting as many talented players on the roster that you feel like have high upside and can achieve. That is the
Yep.
purpose of the draft. And sometimes it's going to be in a position that you might be rich in. And I think about this conversation recently with a lot of mock drafts having the Bengals taking some of these corners that are going to slide. And I see Bengals fans and they're irate about it. They do not want a corner to be drafted because it's not a need. If some of these guys fall and you do your homework in free agency beforehand, and a guy like Delane falls or
I'd
a
be
guy
happy with
like
Delane.
McCoy falls, I don't
Not as
necessarily
happy with
need it
McCoy.
because it elevates your room. It elevates your team. You are getting more talent in the building. I don't understand why
A
that's ever.
Delane, Dax, and DJ Turner cornerback trio is one of the best in the AFC. Like that's a really like high level cornerback room. And you think about what you saw from the Bengals secondary in the back half of the season, the growth from DJ Turner, the growth from Dax Hill later in the season, right? Like, yes, they're wealthy right now, but they need to it's a dog eat dog league, right? You know how many weapons, right, are out there in the AFC and in general, right? You have to play to opponents' strengths, and it's becoming more and more so passing league. So, um, you know, especially with what the struggles that they've had at safety, it cannot hurt to have better corners. So, no, I'm not against the Bengals draft at a corner, especially Delane. I'm all over Delane. I like him. He's a great prospect. McCoy, a little more concerned about coming off an ACL tear, some penalty issues. We'll
If
see.
McCoy was fully healthy this past season, he would be the number one corner in the draft, and it wouldn't be
I,
close.
I don't disagree.
So that now you have to ask yourself the question of, does that injury scare you? Teams
Mhm.
will have the medical, we won't. So they'll
And
know.
that's the thing that like obviously there's so much out there that we don't know, right? They interview so many of these guys, and we'll probably starting next week, we'll start to hear about some of these, right? I know that they interviewed that. The only interview we really heard about is they talked to that Navy defensive lineman at one of the Shrine Bowls, right? That's it, right? As we get into combine, it's going to be like I wouldn't be surprised they talk to Downs, right? They talk to Bain, they talk to Keldrick Fall, because everybody's going to be thrilled about that, right? They talk to all these guys, right? They're probably going to talk to a lot of guys they're not going to draft. We talked about a couple weeks ago where they talked to Nick Eamon last year, right? Like there will be a lot of conversations, and I think that when you look at what the Bengals are trying to do, right, they need to not shoehorn themselves into, okay, we really want this guy, or we really want this position more so than guy,
Mhm.
position, right?
Mhm.
Because then you walk into a hole. Like I wouldn't be mad if they took if one of the two good O linemen fall. Mayalga or Fano. I'm okay, especially Mayalga, who I think could kick inside.
I could talk myself into it.
Yeah, I'm in. Right? There's not a lot of things, and this will be the last point I make today. There's not a lot of ways the Bengals could mess this pick up.
Oh, don't say that.
How
Don't
do
say
they
it.
do it? How do
Don't
they
say
do it
it.
this
Don't say
time?
it. Don't say it. I don't know. McCoy's going to drop to like the Rams at 13, and then he's just going to be an all pro.
He'll
And
be the
he's
greatest ever. Yeah, he'll be Jalen Ramsey 2.0
That's
by
how it
next year.
normally works out with these drafts. Anyway, we got a lot of
And the
time.
Rams have two picks too, so they'll just,
Thanks, Atlanta.
yeah, good job. Good process for a guy that just got arrested for beating the crap out of his girlfriend. So
Yeah, he's probably never going to play another snap in the
awesome.
NFL ever
Good,
again.
really good job, Falcons. Good work. So at least look, it could always be worse. That
We were we were Atlanta, like
yeah,
early 2010s. If we really want to go there, we had a
yeah.
lot of people with a lot of issues. Shout out Pac-Man. Anyway,
The one thing I'll say, this will be the last point of the day. Marvin Lewis didn't draft that bad.
yeah, okay, sure. It
He had
maybe
some good, he had some big misses, but he had some good. Later in his tenure, there were some bad misses. Cedric Ogbuehi,
yeah,
bad miss. Swinging that strike three.
unbelievable. Well, at least it could always be
But
worse.
he took AJ Green. That was a good pick.
I
Huh.
love AJ Green. He's my guy.
All right.
Came
Well,
to our middle school.
what a player. Imagine him with this version of Joe Burrow. Damn. It's a shame. That'll do it for this edition of the Jungle Fever Pod. We'll be back next week. Some more combine thoughts coming next week as we get closer to the biggest party of the year in Indianapolis. Lots of big rumors will be coming out around that time too. So we'll break that all down next week on the Jungle Fever Pod.